So you want to know how to fix bad posture. Well, today we're going to take you out on the gym floor and we're going to teach you how to fix posterior pelvic tilt. That's PPT, opposite to APT, which we did in the last episode. This one is very, very important for all of those of you who are suffering flat back syndrome. All that and more coming up. We are the gym that teaches people how to move instead of just exercise, because we believe that health is about performance, not just body image.
Hey everyone, in case we haven't met, my name is Rad Burmeister. This is my younger and less attractive brother, Yanni Burmeister, and we are Unity Gym, the gym that teaches you how to nourish and move instead of diet and exercise, because we believe that the fitness industry has got it all wrong and that health should be measured by how your body performs and feels, not just how you look. What do you think about that?
But looks are subjective.
Looks are subjective.
And some people believe that I'm better looking than him.
So what do we got on the show today, Yanni?
We're super pumped and we're going to get out on the gym floor pretty much straight away. Posterior pelvic tilt is usually, the most common cause of it is tight hamstrings and glutes, and then weak hip flexors, quadriceps. It can also be tight abdominal, lower abdominals, but the majority of the time it's caused by really, really tight glutes and hammies, very, very weak hip flexors, so the psoas major and minor, and the quadricep muscles. We also do need really nice strong core and nice strong lower back to overcome posterior pelvic tilt. This is the issue I had. Very quick backstory. When I hurt my back after falling from a horse, my body just locked down my hamstrings, glutes and core, and it flattened my back quite seriously. And when I was in my mid-20s, I realized that I basically had no glutes. I needed a very tight belt to hold my pants up. And I went to town training these areas of my body to develop more of an anterior pelvic tilt and bigger, stronger glutes. So that's what we're going to show you guys how to do today. We'll head out on the gym floor if Richie's ready on the gimbal cam.
Oh, look at that.
We are rocking.
Ready for action.
Now make sure you stick around till the end, because we're going to talk about a couple of key mistakes people make when doing this training and also when diagnosing their posterior pelvic tilt. Now we have at Unity Gym a myriad of different stretching techniques, and I'm going to get Rad to demonstrate a couple of our favorite hamstring techniques. So first of all, why don't you start by demonstrating the Ostrich Walk. The Ostrich Walk is a dynamic stretch. It's a really, really great way of creating movement, loaded stretching, but also in a dynamic movement. So it helps to warm up the body as well, and that's why I like to do it first. You got anything else to add about the Ostrich Walk?
That you have all the weight on the front leg.
Technique cues, that's a good thing to point out. All of the weight goes onto the front leg. So Rad, stepping forward, the distance of the step should be quite small, and we want all the weight down on the front foot. Now you may not be able to get your hands on the floor like Rad. He's very, very flexible. You'll notice that there's not a monstrous curve in his lower back. He's really working to experience the movement in his hamstrings. This is the thing. People with very tight hamstrings won't really be able to get all the way down, because what will happen is your hamstring will end and you'll just make up the range in your lower back. And it's quite important as you go down to keep the load in the hamstring. If that means that you're just going to here, that's absolutely fine, okay? Second, we're going to demonstrate a movement on the floor, which is a hamstring drill isolated to the hamstring as well. This is a little bit more controlled and just as effective for different reasons. Okay, so what Rad's doing here is he's doing contract, relax, stretching. At the moment he's in the relaxed position. He's trying to keep his body nice and flat and the inactive leg nice and flat to the ground. Now he's in the contract position. He's stretching and he's also really pulling on that leg with the band here. You could use a towel if you wanted to. You don't need one of these bands. Resting position. He's stretching position. This is 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and rest again. And we repeat that cycle 3 times, then we... 5 times, sorry, and then we swap to the other leg. Swap to the other leg. Yeah, we may as well. Very good, nice and easy. And contract. Now you'll notice none of these stretches are a passive or static stretch. Static stretching is okay, but we found the hamstrings are a very, very strong muscle. They get very tight. They're a power muscle. They're very fast twitch. They're designed for explosive movement. They're highly active when we're sprinting and when we're jumping, doing plyometric movement. And we've found that passive stretching in the hamstrings is not really as effective as active stretching, contract, relax stretching, or loaded stretching, which we'll show now. So let's show a progressive loaded stretch in the hamstring. We do this do you want to do the single leg one first, just as a beginner? So this is the beginner progressive loaded mobility drill for the hamstring. Rad's using his body weight. The stretched leg is perfectly straight. He's balancing on one leg, and the reason for that is because you've got 3 hamstring tendons, and we want them to be working here. We want the body to be stabilizing. It's firing up the nervous system, and it provides for a better stretch in that hamstring. He's swapping sides now. So you can see he's using his hand here as a cue to keep that lower back nice and straight. So he's not bending in the lower back. He's experiencing the stretch fully in the hamstring there. Very, very nice. And that's what we call progressive loaded mobility. Now we can go further and take that even further and do a loaded hamstring. We may as well just demonstrate it real quick because this is very effective. Don't do it on the top, just do the straight leg. Actually, you need to do it on the top. Just demonstrate it on the floor. Yeah. The majority of people will be able to do this on the floor. We do it with feet together. Rad's got 12.5 kilo dumbbells there. He's going to lock his legs straight and go into a Romanian deadlift with a stiff leg, with a straight leg, and pay attention to the amount of effort he's putting into his lumbar spine here. It is critical that we experience this only in the hamstrings, not in the lumbar spine. So he's working extremely hard to go into that anterior pelvic tilt whilst he's doing this. You do not want the hamstrings to pull you into posterior pelvic tilt. Very, very good. Now just quickly demonstrate, drop this down. I probably should have done this first like you did yesterday. Just demonstrate anterior and posterior pelvic tilt. So what Rad's got naturally is quite an excessive anterior pelvic tilt. Anterior pelvic tilt is if the top of his ischium crest here rock forward and the pubic bone comes backward. Now go to PPT, posterior pelvic tilt. Now the ischium crests come to the posterior side, his back, and the pubic bone and the coccyx go forward. Very good. Go to anterior pelvic tilt, posterior pelvic tilt. Now, it's very important that for all of these stretches, you need to be able to control that. There's drills that you can do where we use a fit ball. And this is probably the easiest way to practice PPT and APT, where we just rock forward and backwards sitting on a fit ball. And that's a really great exercise to start with because you must be able to demonstrate APT and PPT really well in the nervous system before trying to stretch the hamstrings or before trying to stretch the hip flexors. And those are the key areas that we've been working on in the last episode and today's episode. Okay, let's move on to the glutes. So we'll start with the basic 90-90 stretch. This is the first glute stretch that we teach. It's very easy. We're going for a 90-degree angle in the front knee and a 90-degree angle in the back knee. And Rad's just leaning forward, rolling forward, making sure that he's posturing up down here. So we're still sort of going into that anterior pelvic tilt a little bit as he leans forward. And then he can do a circular or rotational movement just to open up those glutes nice and easily. Very good. This is pretty much, it's almost a static stretch, except that Rad's sort of bouncing gently forward and back and rotating side to side. It is a static stretch. Okay, let's go to the other side. Nice and easy. Repeating the same thing. Okay, we don't need to stay on that for too long because it's very straightforward. The angle of the knees is the most important thing in the posture in the pelvis. You also want to be trying to posture up. Not everyone's going to get as far over as Rad can get there with his hips nice and level. Some people will probably be that tight that they'll be up here like this, leaning back on the arm. If that's the case, just posture up and go over the knee. That's right. Now let's do progressive loaded mobility, which is the active pigeon. This one is also one that you want to be really careful of if you've got knee issues. So if you've got any meniscal damage in the knee that's diagnosed, you want to be nice and careful with this one. The other option that you can do on this one is that you can lean on a bench. So let's show the regression over here where you put the body on a bench and just go nice and easy into it. Lifting the front leg up a little bit makes it a little bit easier to control. So that's a regression of what they call the active pigeon on the floor there, and it just helps him be able to control it nice and easily down.
The idea is that you're using the glutes to create movement like your hands.
What Rad's saying there is the idea here is that you're using your glutes as much as possible to create the movement, not your hands. You notice that Rad's on his fingers. He's not leaning full force down on the palms of his hands. And that's important, and that's how you progress this movement. It's called progressive loaded mobility for a reason. We're slowly progressing the intensity. So the way that you would start is maybe here with your hands, then go to your fingers, then go to 2 fingers, then repeat that cycle on the floor. And then the goal is eventually, if you've got no issues in the knee, that you can do this without any hands on the floor at all. And that's the ultimate goal, but it's progressive, so we need to do that over time. Okay. Now let's move on to the strengthening. So those are the 2 key areas that we need to stretch for posterior pelvic tilt. And the last one probably is the abdominals. And I really, really like the straight up ab stretch. So what we need to do now is Rad's going to push his hips into the floor, and he's going to go into a push-up position, keeping the pelvis down on the floor. He's going to look up towards the ceiling, and he's stretching that whole flexor chain through the rectus abdominis there. Then he can rotate to the side to hit into the obliques a little bit. So watch the hand position change. He's now got a hand down near that hip, and he's looking over that right shoulder, stretching out the obliques and the abdominals on the left side, and then he'll repeat that to the other side. Nice and easy. Very, very good. Beautiful. And an active stretch or progressive loaded stretch for the flexor chain, just do the low bridge lean back. So this is called a low bridge rotation progression. So what he's going to do is he's going to reach his hand back, just do the real beginner version. He's going to drop the knees forward so he goes on the balls of his feet, and then he's going to push the hips forward as hard as he can. And then with this hand, I want you to reach back over your shoulder. Reach back over your shoulder. Beautiful. Just take it nice and easy. This is a progressive loaded drill, so we're going to be working through that whole flexor chain. And then the advanced version, just do a couple more warm-ups and then show the full version.
A rotation.
A rotation, yep. Beautiful. Into a low bridge rotation and then out. And that is the most advanced flexor chain stretch. Obviously, it takes a lot of time to work up to that drill, so we want to go nice and easy progressive. The very first thing you want to do is learn the weight transfer, leaning back onto the hand, and just drive the hips forward. That's it, alternating from side to side. Then we can progressively lean back and open the abdominals up. Okay, let's go to the strength component now. So the strength component, the main thing we want to target is quadriceps and hip flexor. And the first hip flexor drill we're going to do is really easy. We're going to lay on the ground and we're going to do knee raises. There's 3 progressions to the knee raise. The first one is, and I really, really like to use the hands here as a guide under the lower back. And I want you just to put your fingertips under there, and I want you to press your lower back down into your fingertips. And what that's going to do is that's going to put you into that posterior pelvic tilt, so that we're now going to really feel this in the hip flexors. And now what we're going to do is raise one knee up all the way to here, just before it deloads, so to here, then we go all the way back down to straight again. That's the basic version, and alternate to the other side, okay? Now we'll go to the more advanced version where we bring both feet up together. Good. So Rad's still pressing his lower back down onto the ground, so we're feeling that through the hip flexors and lower abdominals. And now the most advanced version is legs straight, and we go all the way up to the top. Beautiful. Nice and slow down. He's going to be working a lot harder now. Very good. All the way through. Okay. Now, that's the basic. That's the beginner progressions. The more advanced progressions, we go to hanging. So we're going to do hanging knee raises and then some toes to bar. I'll move this barbell for you so you can do it over here. Brad's just grabbing some chalk to chalk up so his grip is spared. So the first progression, he's just going to do a hanging knee raise. And what we want to be doing here is going into that posterior pelvic tilt, guys. So he's switched the abs on. Now he's cancelled the abs out. They can't create the movement from here on. It's going to be all in the hips. He brings the knees up and down. So let's say we put a spot here on the floor. That's where I want your toes to go to, okay? So we keep those abs switched on. 1, to the spot. That's it. 2, to the spot. So now he's got his abs switched on. The movement, the concentric and eccentric contraction is happening from primarily the hip flexors. Very good. You could work up to doing 10 reps like that. Then the next progression, we'll just show them one more progression, which will just be out and eccentric down. So now he's going to lift it up, legs out to extend the lever and eccentrically control it on the way down. He's still aiming to keep the abs on. He's aiming for that magic spot there that's going to keep his abs engaged. Eccentric. Beautiful. And the next progression from that is toes up and down, and then we bring the toes all the way to the bar, which is probably going to be too hard for most people anyway, really, is it? Yeah. Yep. Okay. So the next thing we want to do, that is going to cover your hip flexors and your core muscles.
So you should say, I'll say that when you do this, so many people do this and say, I can't feel it, I can't feel it. And they want to go to the next one, they want to try and get their toes to the bar. You're not doing it right. You've got to understand, it's not like, when you learn exercise like this, I think the biggest thing that beginners mess up is they hear people saying instructions and then that goes totally out the window and they just try and make it look like the demonstration. But the instructions are engage your abs so you get a posterior pelvic tilt, and whilst keeping that switched on, raise your knees up. If you do that, even just what I was doing there for someone at my level is enough that I feel like if I did a couple more reps, I'd get a great workout from it. Yeah. So don't feel that it's too, don't say, oh, it's too easy, I don't feel anything. If you don't feel anything, you're not doing it right.
And that's why I'm not showing the toes to bar, because the toes to bar will be, in most cases, you'll be able to do a version of it, your interpretation of a toes to bar, but you won't get the workout. You'll be pulling with your upper body and leaning back on the bar, and it's just not worth it. But you'll get a much better, if you've truly got posterior pelvic tilt and you need to strengthen those hip flexors to pull your pelvis back into alignment, then we're getting into what I wanted to talk about in there, which is that we'll wrap the show up with. Okay, the last thing we want to do is quad strength, and there are a couple of fantastic exercises for quad strength. The first one we are going to start off with, Richie, can you remember what this exercise is called? It's a sissy squat. I had a brain fart there, folks, sorry. Okay, so first thing I want Rad to do is he's going to hold the weight behind his body, which is going to help keep him totally upright. The more we stay upright, the more we load the quads. The more we lean forward, the more we load the glutes and the hamstrings. The glutes and the hamstrings are strong enough. We want the quads to get stronger. So he's going to do this variation of a sissy squat where his heels are elevated. Having the heels elevated and the weight on the forefoot dramatically increases the load in his quadriceps and also a little bit in his knees. So you shouldn't need to go heavy for this. But what we do want to do is crank up the reps. The idea here is to do 15 to 20 reps. I know bodybuilders who have amazing quads who do up to 40 reps on these sorts of exercises because the quads love high repetition work. So step up variations, anything where our body's upright. Front squats are really good. Front loaded barbell, front racked barbell squats are really, really good because they keep the body upright, they minimize the glute and hamstring contraction and maximize the quad contraction. These sissy squats here, you can progress to an unsupported sissy squat. So I'll just get Rad to demonstrate a couple. I don't want to blow his legs out because we are training legs straight after this. But this is the ultimate gold standard in quad development for calisthenics, and it is hard, very, very hard. Beautiful, and back up again. And then of course you could load it with a kettlebell or a weight in front of your body, but it's very, very hard. So what we want to do is progressively overload. Start with an assisted sissy squat. There are gyms that have machines that actually lock your legs into the sissy squat. It's like a frame that you can then lean your shins on, and it'll maximize that quad development. The other way that we develop quads in isolation here for beginners, I'm going to just set those up for the step up. And this is a great alternative for anyone who has knee issues, because that there, the sissy squat, will be way too heavy. Now Rad can do this with 12 kilos. Can you, with your knee? You'll be able to, yeah. You wouldn't start with 12.5 kilos. This is it looks really simple, but if you do this properly, it's a very, very hard exercise on the quads. Now, the things to pay attention to here are the tracking of his knee. He wants the knee tracking right through the mid-foot, okay? He doesn't want the knee buckling in at all. Second, he wants his hips nice and level, so his hips are staying level. Third, he does not want to be pushing off this leg. It's only the active leg working. So Rad's lifting his toes up on this leg to avoid any plantar flexion, any push off the forefoot. Swap over and do the other side.
Might put those down before I do
Oh, okay. Rad's got we've got to train straight after this. We're doing heavy squats and he's going to blow his knees out otherwise. Okay, and now the real key to this, other than the cues I've just told you, getting rid of that leg so it's not working, keeping the hips level, keeping the knee tracking right over the middle of the foot, is reps. You want to start on about 30 repetitions per leg. And that means for most people, to be able to keep the form good, you'll be starting on 3 or 4 kilos, guys, on the dumbbells. 12.5 is probably a little bit excessive for what Rad's doing here. That's it. They're the two biggest bang for your buck quad exercises, other than the front squat, which is much more advanced, that you can use to start with to develop really, really good leg strength. So let's go back into the studio. We'll clean that up in a sec. And we'll bring this in for a landing. All right. Well, it looks like the light's not very good. We're out there. Sorry about the darkness there, folks. We don't have a lot of natural light coming through the windows today in the gym. So what I wanted to talk about was what we tipped on out there, and this is the biggest mistake people make when they are training for both the anterior pelvic tilt and the posterior pelvic tilt. The key is being able, if you're strengthening the area, you need to be able to hold your body in the opposing tilt that you suffer from. So if you're trying to fix posterior pelvic tilt, you need to be able to shift into APT and PPT really well and hold your body position. Because like what we were demonstrating with the hip flexor exercises, if you can't posterior pelvic tilt and engage the abs and hold the abs on for the entirety of the set, then the moment you lose that, you start to compensate in other areas of the body. The most common one when we're doing hanging knee raises is that we compensate in the upper body, in the shoulders, and we build momentum by flexing the lats. And it's a big problem. We see it very commonly done incorrectly by people who think that they can progress their body, but by progressing, they're actually regressing or stifling their progress. Have you got anything else to add to that?
Yep, I worked on this, the opposite, to try and fix an anterior pelvic tilt for 20 years and got absolutely nowhere. And the only reason I got nowhere is because I didn't understand the nature of adaptation and how this stuff works. And to undo something like this, an environmental condition that is made worse by sitting down all day long, and the average person in the Western world, if you work in an office job, you spend probably about 14 hours a day sitting down. So to undo that amount of damage, it requires some serious commitment and some dedication, and it comes over time. And you need to make a decision that you're going to get this result no matter what, and then you work on it until however long it takes. And I think that's been the biggest change in my training in the last 5 years, is that I started approaching training like that. I didn't want something and then do it for 3 months and think, oh, I'm not getting anywhere, I'm going to try something else. I said I want something and I'm not going to stop until I got it. And sure enough, I started doing things that I could never ever do before. And some of them took years to develop, like a press to handstand. That was probably the one skill that I can do now that's taken the longest amount of time to be able to develop. And this is the same thing. So you need to make a decision that you're going to do it, and then you follow these principles, you use overload and periodization, and you don't stop until you see a change.
Yeah, absolutely. And just focus on the basics, turn up and do the work. One of the best, I think, ways of sort of putting that was by Coach Christopher Summer, where he just said, you know, progress in calisthenics and gymnastics is not linear like strength training. You don't see nice, tangible improvements in strength every single day. They often come after a long period of stagnation where you feel like you're going nowhere, and then all of a sudden you make an astronomical leap in the right direction. The key to success in calisthenics and gymnastics is just turning up and doing the work, which is why the majority of people never get there, never make it, because you just get too frustrated with not seeing nice, tangible, linear progression.
Yep, absolutely.
Anyway, tomorrow we're going to be talking about shoulders, everything shoulders, and that's going to be a big kettle of fish, because one of the things we need to work on is spinal mobility, spinal posture, and then the next is what's happening in the chest and shoulders themselves. So we're going to spread that out over a couple of shows. We're going to show you some amazing spinal integration mobbing drills that we use in our warm-up and every day that Rad has been working on for quite some time. And a lot of people get amazing, amazing results from this stuff. So stay tuned, tune in tomorrow, and we'll keep this journey of correcting posture going. Take care.
Have a good day.
Health is about performance, not just body image.
You better be willing to accept what you're going to have to do to get there.
We'll start focusing on movement goals, strength goals, flexibility goals.
When you nail that skill, that's there forever.
The body image goal doesn't get you that far.
It's the consistency and frequency that's going to get you there. It's not the intensity.
There's no shortcuts to mastery and movement. Destination doesn't change overnight, but your direction will.
The gym is not the place to beat up the body that you hate. It's the place to build the body that you love.
We are the gym that teaches people how to move instead of just exercise, because we believe that health is about performance, not just body image.